Yeah, well, you know, that's like just your opinion, man.
So hello and welcome to the Audio Opinion Show, where audio people gather and argue about stuff, because that's the whole shtick. We have opinions and we just share them, and they're worth everything that you think they're worth. I'd like to welcome maybe the largest panel we've ever had of my esteemed colleagues. I usually say what some of our various disciplines are, but it's just too many people. Just a lot of smart people. We just have a lot of smart people, and we're just going to give our opinions about stuff till we can't stand it anymore. I do want to, man, I'm so bad at this. Andy, why do you let me freaking co-host with you? I'd like to welcome my co-host, Andy Broughton, who is smarter and more polite than me and far more Canadian. And then everyone else, you could have been an email. And the rest of everyone else is just going to be like, just look at their name and you go, that's Joe, or that's Pete. That's it. That's all we get. So let's just roll with this because we got a bunch of people to do. So let's do a poll, because that's how we start this thing, is we start with a poll. And of course, our first poll is the most...
unhost me there, buddy?
Sure.
I can vote.
Oh, it's all about you.
It is.
I still don't get to vote.
I must have a say.
Withdraw. Okay, you must have a say. All right, I don't get a say, so vote for me. All right, so the most important question. We're going to launch the most important question. The most important question is, how do we feel about The Princess Bride, but with Muppets? Now, multiple choice is an option. Our possible answers, for those of you on YouTube who can't see this poll: option number 1, nobody, it should never be made. Option number 2, nope, 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 nope. Option 3, we approve. Option 4, what a dumb question, just no. And option 5, all of the above. So to review, all of the above would be nobody, it should never be made, nope, 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 we approve, what a dumb question, just no. And the votes are coming in rapidly. 12, 13, good grief. We have 12 people and we have more than 12 answers. I like that. That's, multiple choice. Right. That's how that works. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll because we got enough stuff, and I'm going to share the results, and we will see that we approve, which is the proper answer. The proper answer is The Princess Bride, but done with Muppets. We approve of this. This is something we approve of. Now, it does matter which Muppets. There is a meme going around that picks which Muppets for each character. I won't go into the details. We've only got an hour. But yes, we approve. That is the right answer. Okay. So now that we all know how the polling works, we can actually pick our topic. So what's our topic for the day? I'm going to launch what's our topic for the day. Some of these are repeats, some of them are not. Topic for the day. First option, what's your favorite audio pet peeve, i.e. what grinds your gears? Option number 2, what do we think the supply chain shortage means for the future of audio? We know what that's about. Number 3, what do we think the skilled labor shortage might mean for the future of audio? And I mean specifically skilled labor shortage in our industry. And number 4, what's the favorite tool that you've acquired in the last 6 months? What's your favorite little gadget that you managed to acquire in the last 6 months that you want to talk about that everyone else will be bored by because it's so geeky that no one will care? I am the host. I'm a professional. Don't try this at home. So 1, 2, 6, 10. I think we are there. Okay, that was the last vote. So I'm ending our poll. This is what we are going to talk about. Sharing the results. Drum roll, please. What does the skilled labor shortage in our industry mean for the future of audio? Which I think is a really interesting question. I kind of expect this conversation to also spill into supply chain shortages and all this, all this other stuff. I will say this is a great conversation, and but just to remind us all, it's the Audio Opinion Show, not the geopolitical economies of scale of the entire world show. So if we start straying down like, well, I think that China should do, then let's talk about how this affects us and audio gear and audio stuff. And if no one volunteers in the next 3.2 seconds, I'm going to throw it to Andy Broughton. Michael just did. So, and Michael made it in by 30 seconds at the wire. Congratulations to Michael for making it right before we started. It's all you. Go, my friend. What's your thing?
I really didn't want to talk about that one though. That's
okay. Well then I misread your hand. Pete Erskine had his hand up. Go, Pete.
Okay.
In our industry, particularly in my industry, RF coordination and intercom, there aren't very many people anyway. And I like it that way. So as far as I'm concerned, they should all go be A1 somewhere or A2s. I hate A2. And I'll just do my little gig and I'm happy. So I don't really see it as a skilled labor shortage, although I would like to see more women in our industry. Totally. There just aren't any. I mean, I haven't been I've been worked on a show in 2 years. Well, no, I can't say that. Jess Kovac was on a couple of different shows with me, but she's about the only one who's ever been on a show. So that's one thing that I think is a skilled labor shortage.
Go, Alyssa. That's a great follow on.
Yeah, I agree with you, but sometimes it is just a New York-based thing because I work in the New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey kind of area. And if I really hate myself, Pennsylvania, but I try not to work there because the rate's not great. No offense to Pennsylvania, but come on, up your rate. Yeah, so it's weird because in New York, because I worked at Sound Associates, which was a sound shop for 6 years. And it was interesting to see slowly but surely how many women would come in and build shows. And I actually find it now, I'm seeing more and more women because, no offense, all the old guys have retired, gotten sick, or just left the business altogether because they couldn't wait out the pandemic. So I'm actually seeing more young people, but not as many skills. It's definitely a lot more young people, but not so many that actually know what they're doing. For me, it just gives me more opportunities to actually get my face out there and do that. Now, I don't know if I'm getting more opportunities because I'm dumb enough to go work during COVID, or if I'm actually like valuable and I actually do have the skills. And now that there's a shortage, I have my chance to shine. So it's interesting that the shortage is actually in favor for people who are considered orphans in the industry, that don't have mentors, that don't have parents, that are just like coming up now.
Hey, Alyssa,
working in a shop is an obvious place to have a change in the ratio, but in my world, it's all freelance people, and there's very, very few women in the freelance business. And I think it's a matter of producers and or people like P-Dub hiring more women on their shows who are in a position to do that.
well, and Alyssa, if you didn't have the skills, you wouldn't get the call. What this does give you is the opportunity to get compensation at a level possibly higher than before. And just an observation, on our Nashville New Year's Eve show on CBS, Claire Brothers sent 2 fantastic female sound engineers who absolutely nailed the show, and I guarantee are going to be invited back to many, many shows.
Yeah, this is an interesting turn of the conversation that I think is super valuable, because I do think that the vacuum that is being created by, a bunch of folks just were already close to retirement, so they just freaking left, or they couldn't wait it out, or they left, or whatever. And now I was talking to a couple of younger engineers just today, a man and a woman, both of whom were like we're kind of green, but we're getting called to do things. The guy even said, I'm getting called to do some things that I tell them, I'm not 100% sure I know how to do this. And they're like, we need somebody who at least, do you 70% know how to do this? Because we have, and the thing that will happen is he'll come in 70% knowing it, and he will leave 85% knowing it. And that's, and that's how we built. And she, in the same breath, was like, I'm getting an opportunity to do things that I wouldn't ordinarily get to do. And I'm telling them basically, I'm not 100%, she's getting into doing sports mixing, and she's never done sports before. She said, I've never done sports before. They're like, we need somebody. Do you know how to mix audio? Well, yeah. Okay.
Being encouraged to fake it until you make it is great. Normally you have to just say, oh yeah, I'm completely skilled in that area. And you just jump in and hope that you pull it off. To be encouraged to do that is pretty cool.
And the compensation thing is really important here. I had a longtime client 3 months ago on a big gig, solicited my services and asked for a quote. I sent a quote like I always do. My rate went up since 2020. It went up since 2019. They came back at me. Well, you did it for this much before. Is this a mistake? And in the past, I would always have to defend that with some reason. Why this time it's more, either more hours or whatever. This time my answer was, my rate went up. And that was it. End of discussion. And I got the job.
I love that story. That's great.
That's a happy ending.
The good kind.
Yeah.
Guess they're all good kinds, but
I've noticed a couple of things here in the local DC metro area, not to use the other word that Maddox hates so much.
Yeah, don't say DMV. Bothers me. I'm triggered.
So we just shot the Kennedy Center Honors TV show at the end of November, beginning of December. And a number of the stagehands were griping about how many new people were there. And normally Kennedy Center Honors has always been a haven for the A-list, longtime stagehand, blah, blah, blah. And now all these relatively new stagehands who have not necessarily been in the Kennedy Center long were there shooting this TV show. And I kind of turned to them and just was like, well, if someone is on this crew that doesn't know, why are you going to gripe about it? Why don't you go teach them what you want them to know? Like, rather than just sitting here and complaining, and I'm not saying that everyone's going to be open to that educational experience, but go and try to teach them in a non-judgmental, talking down to them kind of way. And maybe they'll actually listen to you, and maybe next time they'll be better.
So much easier to complain though, isn't it?
It is so much easier to complain. I also have noticed a thing that's been happening recently, and a number of people in the theater scene here have retired over the course of COVID, and Ford's Theater specifically went out of their way to try to become a more diverse and inclusive environment. And one of the ways that they attempted to do this was by saying their new A2 that is coming in has to be a non-male identifying human being. And while that seems very positive on the surface, one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting, coming from a number of my female audio friends, and Alyssa, if you have comments, I'm definitely open to hearing them, was a complaint about how they were going to get pigeonholed as the A2 and never really given a shot to become the A1, the department head, the leader of the audio department, because it wasn't, hey, we want to hire a female or a non-binary identifying individual because we want that in our culture. It was, we actually want an A2 who's female because then we can trap them in that role and they can make our cast feel more comfortable because the creepy men are being creepy. And while I agree, there have definitely been a bunch of creepy men in that theater over the course of the years, maybe teach creepy men to be less creepy and allow women to take the head role too. I'll step back.
I have so many opinions to what you just said, which is perfect for this show. I love being an A2. Not everyone does. That is my favorite thing to do. Yes, I do get more work because I'm clean cut and female A2. I wouldn't have necessarily seen that as a bad thing or being pigeonholed, but I also don't work in your jurisdiction, so it could mean something totally different. If people don't want a house position, that's understandable. A lot of us got into this industry because that's not our thing. I would have seen it as an opportunity. And yes, sometimes A2s, and I've noticed this because I've worked in both film, television, corporate, live events, and theater now in my span of 13-year career, 14-year career. A lot of times people just don't practice bodily autonomy. And that's all it is. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. It's just going, hey, is it okay if I put this microphone here? Hey, I'm going to be going up the back of your shirt. Hey, this needs to go here. It's amazing the difference. People will be so much more open to being mic'd and comfortable. I just did the Heisman Trophy Awards at Jazz at Lincoln Center, and ESPN guys didn't really, it was their first year working there, weren't really super happy with us because they didn't know us. But the second they needed someone to put microphones on all of the moms, guess who's doing it? The second that like one of the ladies, like she had like a slit in her pants and her leg showed, and someone points to me and goes, hey, are you hair and makeup? Now, the jerk in me the New Yorker wants to go, do I look like hair and makeup? But instead I was like, no, but how can I help you? I have safety pins on my on my chalk pouch. And he's like, her leg's showing. So I go to fix her. I'm like, hey, just so you know, your leg is slightly exposed. They're a little concerned about it, but if you're not worried, I'm not worried. And she's like, oh, and she just adjusted. And I came back and the guy's like, oh, thanks. I couldn't have asked her. So I'm like, you could have. There would have been a nicer way. And I understand that everyone knows that, but like getting pigeonholed into that position forever and ever, eventually I feel like it depends on the venue. If that is how that venue works, if that venue is, this is who you are, this is who you will always be, and you will never escape from it, then yeah, I can understand the concern. But for me, I just see that as like, oh, it's an opportunity. And talk is cheap. Action is worth so much more. And I've learned through my experience that I could sit here and I could list my resume for the next 20 minutes. But if I actually sat there and did the work without anyone asking me to and being very quiet about it, that makes a bigger impact. So I feel like those women, if they had the opportunity, they could have showed it. They could have showed their chops. And that's more important to me.
One interesting thing I've noticed is the few times that I've been in A2 is if you're talking to the man or woman you're trying to mic and are just straight, okay, I need to put this mic on. I want to put it on here. We want to run it here, put your mic on the back. It's not a gender thing. You're not being sexual in any way. You're not talking about that. It's just straight up front and work with them. It works fine. And it seems to be in that particular situation, you both have a task to do, and it gets done.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as timing, like knowing when the right second is to walk right in their face. We have to do this. Are you ready? Just that one little thing versus the wrong time.
And asking them, are you right-eared or left-eared? Did you bring your own ears, etc.?
Yeah, treating people like people and relating to them like people. It's a really, really great start, I think. I find that all the time. It's in this business, but it's the same thing if you go to the grocery store, talk to the clerk like they're a human being. Can't kill you. So that's my approach.
Except the clerk at the grocery store doesn't understand when I ask her if she's right-eared or left-eared. So I don't know what's going on.
And I will say that I've replaced a number of other male A2s here in the metro area that have not apparently understood that, like, just introducing yourself and being like, hi, I'm here to put a microphone on you, coming in with a little bit of confidence, but not like being overly cocky and aggressive, and just explaining what you need to get done puts a lot of people at ease. And that just reaching at their face is not acceptable. And I don't understand why people still think that like that's okay.
I have just a quick story about that. So through a work friend, his wife was a producer. She was recording these promos, and she's like, "Oh, the sound recorder needs help miking people. I know it's a little bit different than theater A2." And this man would just come up to these actors and touch them without asking them. At one point, he had cut his finger and didn't know it, and he was bleeding on the actors. And I was like, "Sir, you should go wash your hands. You should go wash your hands and put on a Band-Aid." And he, like, the fact that he didn't even realize he was bleeding on people was just, it astounds me to this day. Like, how could you not know?
I do. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just cutting in because I just did. Sorry, Joe. I beat you by half a second. I do think that to the idea of any opportunities that are open for women in any way that lowers the bar in any way, I am all in favor of, no matter what. I will say that we have heard the definitive things that we probably need to talk about on this particular topic, because there are freaking 12 dudes on here, and I would really like to change that. So that's just all I'm going to say about that. If you are hearing this, or you hear it on a podcast or anything, and you're not an old dude like me, please come on my show, because man, do we need more voices. But I do think that this is an awesome opportunity for a lot of people that may have been running into some not quite open doors. Joe, you said the thing about, older hands kind of like being grumpy because there was all these new people. Well, back in the day, you could be grumpy about all these new people, and the next gig, there would be lots of people that were super experienced that would show up because you got grumpy about the new people, and like life would go back to the way it was before. But now, if you get grumpy about the new people and the new people don't show up, then you've got 5 people for a freaking 12-hand call, and you suddenly feel really stupid that you like chased away all the new people instead of helping to raise them up to, build the entire, skilled labor pool, if you will. So, that was the first thing I thought of when you said that. It's like, we can't get away with, like, us old farts can't even get away with like keeping the door closed, because it's just going to mean we can't get the job done. I don't want to lift boxes anymore. I don't want to run. Like, I need new blood to then become me, in a decade or whatever. And then they bring in new blood. Like, it's rising boat.
Sorry,
go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say just one small thing. New technicians and new skilled labor is one thing, but I'm noticing after touring now that the unskilled labor, the people that are loading the trucks and pushing boxes and this sort of thing, that's where there's a really, really big problem. We almost never were able to get our full complement of crew. And I'm not even sure how you're going to solve that other than prices going up, because you're going to have to start paying people a lot more money.
You can't even solve it. You can't even solve it with money right now.
Maybe not.
And, maybe in skilled stuff, we might be able to get some graybeards out of retirement to come do your award show or something. But right now, I can tell you that every arena call we filled in the last 4 months has been at least 25% down. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is we've got the shows in on time and out on time with less people. That's also why you have the few grumpy old people that are still there are grumpy because the new people don't know anything, because they literally are brand new. They're still probationary workers. And a lot of what they need to know is experience-based. I mean, we can tell them certain things. We can demonstrate certain things. We can behave a particular way. But that doesn't mean they're going to get the skill set they need in 2 gigs. or 3 calls or whatever it is. There's still going to be new people. And what winds up happening is the grumpy old people shoulder a greater part of the burden in doing that because they know what needs to be done. They can instinctively go, pull that cable or connect that thing. And the new people don't have that. And it's going to be a couple years before they have that. So it's going to be a bumpy road for a while.
And it's not even so much the skill level as much as the how they actually can work. Are they good workers? I don't care if somebody knows how to wrap a cable. I just want them to listen to what I say.
To which I'm saying, Andy, good luck, my brother.
Exactly.
Yeah, even basic knowledge of their surroundings and where they are and who they're talking to. My fellow RF guy at New Year's Eve, Joe Calabrese, we're standing on a loading dock taking a break, and he says to me, "This is the first gig I've worked in this city where I don't recognize a single face on the local crew," and me either. In years, always, all these people, not a single one of them. And speaking about basic knowledge, I'm standing next to our stage manager, who I've known for 25 years. I've toured with him twice. A young stagehand walks up to him. "Do you know where I can find a wood block?" He asks, "Maybe. What are you using it for?" "I don't know. I'm new." That was the entire answer. And he's like, "Well, what crew are you working with?" "Well, that guy over there."
Yeah, they never even know what crew they're on. They don't know who they're working with.
Yes, the entire extent of the conversation. He's like, "Unless you could tell me what you're working on, I don't know what to tell you." And he's the head stagehand. The head stage manager over the whole production.
Well, I heard him asking for a musical instrument, and he could have been asking for a piece of 2x4.
Exactly. And it turns out it was for to block up a scaffold somewhere halfway across the grounds.
But at a certain point, that becomes a matter of like the union steward on site or the crew lead on site of the local labor has to be more in tune with informing his stagehands or her stagehands or their stagehands what their department is, number one.
Yeah, but dude, I was standing there and I can tell you just from watching this conversation, you could inform this person all you wanted and you would get no further. And that's the labor pool. That's who we have.
Yeah, I just never run into this before, this idea that a bunch of people don't even know what department they're in. They don't know who they're working with. They're just wandering around on stage, hoping that somebody pulls them one way or another.
I heard the meetings in the morning. They were fully instructed. I heard them. I was standing there. They just don't pay attention. They're there for a day's pay and that's it.
And I will say, coming from someone who is a local stagehand as well as someone who travels and owns my own company, it is very hard with some of these new people to separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will. And there are definitely going to be people who fall to the side, but there are also definitely going to be people who will shine and show you good results if you give them the time. And so it does become a responsibility of those who are in senior positions as a local stagehand, so like me, to go in and try to raise up those who are good. And it becomes a struggle when you can't necessarily just grab someone and be like, "You're going to be my shadow for the rest of this gig and you're going to soak up everything." And I've worked with so many people who just cannot focus. I mean, I have trouble focusing, I get it, but like at the end of the day, like, you're going to make a lot more money if you do what I do. I'm just saying.
Michael, you've got your hand up.
So I just did a big crew labor company.
Michael, sorry, I'm interrupting you only because we can't hear you. Try one more time. You're like breaking up like crazy. I don't know if you're like on Wi-Fi or cell phone or what.
Yeah, I'm on Wi-Fi. Never mind.
All right, we'll swing back to you, Lipnick. Since you snuck in at the last minute, you better have something useful to say.
buy low and sell high. No.
Okay. Useful.
Thank you. We're talking about a lot of things here. By the way, is my mic level good and all that? Because I'm good. Okay, great. Yeah, this is an interesting stew of different subjects going on within the same realm here. And the first thing I heard was around A2s, for example, talking to clients. And client skills, they can be taught, but we'd all rather work with that person who just sort of gets it. They watch enough client interaction with the leads and they go, okay, say less, when you're putting the mic on them, are they in, like, do you say anything? Or do you just say how there's their day going? Whatever that is, that's a feel thing. The other thing that we're, I think, talking about here too, there's a lot of things on the plate here, is working with different locals and crews around the country. And I've done a little bit of that. And one thing I have noticed is that some crews and locals, it never changes. It doesn't matter who you're working with. There's sort of like this inbred attitude of like, hey, we're the most important thing here. You're just visiting, Then there's also where they maybe had that attitude and you come back in 2 years and then everybody's like on board and they're a real solid crew. And I think sometimes that has to do with, like you said, top down. People are training them going, look, we want to be a go-to city where they come in and, they trust us. So that's another thing we're talking about.
So Andy, I'm specifically interrupting you because what we're specifically talking about and trying to steer back to is the ongoing and certainly going to be ongoing for a while significant skilled labor shortage in our business. So
that's my third thing.
And so the first thing that popped into my head was what the point you just made about different, but how do we think and then you can say your third thing and everybody can kind of give it some thought, but like how is this difference in the amount of labor pool just going to change the culture of a lot of established venues and a lot of established locals and because we don't have the same percentages of skilled, medium skilled, new, like we have this kind of skewed boat.
My answer is I don't know, but I will say this, and I think this might have been alluded to earlier in this conversation, which is, what would you rather have? Would you rather have someone highly skilled but doesn't have a good attitude, or they're hungry, they're smart, they can think on their feet, they don't have the skills, but they're easily trainable. They just have to shadow you for a few hours or a few days or whatever it is. And they build up those skills and you can trust them. And those are people that can think on their feet. And I would personally rather have the latter. And
depends how much time you have.
I was going to say, are you cloning these, Mr. Lipnick? Are you cloning these?
No,
because I don't know where we're going. Because they're not making any more of those than they were 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And the problem now is, even if you get someone who has that potential, you yell at them and they go home at lunch and you just don't see them again.
I will answer this that way, which is that, and I don't have a look. I think what you do is you leverage your networks of people. And you ask for that. You say, I don't need an A2, but I've got a gig coming up in 3 months. Do you know someone locally who can shadow me? And then I can train them. And then they get them. Now I know that might be unrealistic in certain gigs. Of course it will. But that person that you train, then they're like beholden to you in a good way. It's a good relationship. And hopefully.
Hey, and Andrew, and when your time is short, Andrew Broughton, when your time is short, I've been bit by the guy who thinks he knows it all, who's an excellent engineer. Many times when I knew the guy and I knew he knew how to hook up W4 mass connectors, so I trusted him, which I almost never did. And he took it upon himself to connect front of house to direct and monitors to transformer, because that's how he thought it's supposed to be, even though I instructed him otherwise. So we get on stage and there's no fan of power on stage because it's all coming from Monitor World. I'd rather have had the green guy in that case.
I guess it depends. And what I'm saying is it depends. You can't always say for sure that the hungry person is the best choice. Yeah, lots of times it will be, but there may be a time when you just go, I haven't got time. I need the person who can just take care of this thing. Qualified, of course. I think
for a road crew, it's fine. But when you go into a venue and you have a brand new 150 people that are going to be your local crew, the audio people I've worked basically say, okay, audio people, you're my crew. Who knows how to coil a cable? You don't? Okay, go over there to carpentry. Basically, that was the entire interview.
I think Pete has something to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, Pete. The other Pete.
Yeah. No, I have a few thoughts about this from, gigging during COVID and it's still happening. The labor shortage is causing a dangerous situation that basically causes supervisors to slow down the work. And so most shows are loading in, the multi-day load-in shows that I do most of the time, they're loading in 30 to 40% slower, mostly because of rigging is usually slower. And it's not because people are unskilled. It's because either the full call wasn't filled, or there are some people that have less experience and, they've done the certifications, but they haven't been, actually on site doing things. So in that situation, I think it's important for all of us to just have some gig soft empathy, I call it, because we're all out of shape and it's going to continue to be that way for another few years. And that leads into ladies in our industry, which is that it's really difficult to find qualified ladies for the position that I need them for. And numerous times tried the book, and they're either really busy or just they're non-existent. And I think that's our fault for not allowing ladies from the get-go to be part of the boys club when it comes time to learn and really bring them up through the ranks, usually as stagehands or at a back shop at a vendor somewhere. But so that's that. Then I think I hit all the things. Thanks.
Aram, go ahead, because I heard somebody say the word rank, and then I just thought to myself, if only we had somebody who knew something about that. So that's it. No, that's my whole lead in.
What I was actually going to say is very similar to what Pete was just going to say. Is the fact that the majority of people on this call are very lucky in that we worked a lot probably throughout COVID, and most of the local crews that we're now starting to work with again did not. And that's why there's so many new faces, and you have all these people that are just plain out of practice, and it's gonna take a year or two to just kind of get that all back up. And to Pete's point, it's slow going because of that, and it's just kind of been a drain, and it just needs to get filled back up. And it's not necessarily, I don't see it as necessarily certain people are go-getters or not go-getters. The distribution of people is probably pretty similar to what it was. It's just that there's been, the drain was let out of the tub, and now we close the thing again, and the water just needs to fill back up, and it's going to suck in the meantime.
And I think that Pete touched on this perfectly, that essentially one of the biggest things that we need to, as more experienced people, especially when we're talking to our clients or production supervisors or whatever the title is, adjusting some expectations. It's like, we did this last year and we loaded it in 7 hours, so it should be fine. It's exactly the same show, and going, or it took 10 hours, so I don't see any reason why we'd hit overtime. It's just kind of a different, like you said, calls are just not as full, or the folks that are doing the jobs don't have the same level of experience. And that doesn't mean that they're completely new or completely green or aren't smart enough to do anything. But, we all know that there's a lot of things that I no shortcuts to because I've been doing this for so long. And there's also a lot of little mistakes that I don't make anymore, like, oops, I ran the feeder backwards or whatever, that, crop up. And they're not showstoppers, but it just means, oh yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer and that, is pretty much in all departments. And again, we all know, like, if the lighting department is slow, they're going to hold us up at some point. If we're slow, we're going to hold somebody else up at some point. So, even if, like, all the carpentry is great, like the set got built perfectly, but, now lighting's behind and the freaking truss is in the way and I can't fly my PA or whatever. And we're right back where we started.
So when I do shows with you, I should carry 12 turnarounds. Is that what you're saying?
Well, for me, always, yes. That would be super, super smart.
So we haven't heard from Ike or Ed, I don't think. Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Ike.
Ed. I've just been listening to all of this with interest. I think the crew thing is like the local crew thing. Something that I've noticed, like, over the last 5-6 years, is that the quality of local crews that you get around the country varies widely, and it varies from very good in local 1, local 2, New York, Chicago, Boston kind of places, to like terrifying in places out further into the hinterlands, where there are people who are probably just there because they need some money to fill a prescription or something. And it's so that could be pretty scary. I have not been to the United States in 2 years, so I don't know what's going on. The few shows that I've done up here has mostly been with thanks, Pete.
Hey, Ike, we've been talking to some people. We're going to let you back in soon.
Yeah. The few shows that I've done up here have been okay. The just in general, the biggest challenge with working with people that are inexperienced is safety, situational awareness. And, as us being experienced senior people out there, we have a huge responsibility to keep our heads like way up, not just for, necessarily for people in our department, but somebody that's across the stage that's about to push a line array into the pit because they're leaning on it or they don't know how to control it or whatever. That's just something that's going to be incumbent on all of us going forward. Is there going to be a labor shortage? My labor is quite available. So, if anybody needs, what is that going on? Anyway, if anybody, I mean, and the other thing too.
What are you doing?
Another thing, okay, I'm going somewhere with this. The other thing is that through this whole downtime that we've been on, there has been an awful lot of training going on. And the people at the Signal to the Noise podcast and so on have this terrific mentoring program going, and they are producing like some really, really great young talent is coming out of that. So, there is some hope for the future. And I think ultimately it's going to be better when those people of, every possible stripe you can imagine start coming into the business. I think it's just going to get better.
Good point. Ed?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of great opinions so far. So some of the things I can say is, I think there's a huge opportunity for people who were on lower level, were A2s or maybe were, just getting into the industry pre-pandemic to now make leaps in their careers because there is some vacancies at the A1 levels or even A2 levels. So there's room to grow, which is good and can also be not so great because if they don't have the skill set and knowledge to back that up, then that's not going to be so great for so many shows. I also am already seeing through a lot of the communities that I'm part of and the forums that I surf, many of the people who maybe were either house of worship sound people or, again, just green people who bought an X32 don't know what they don't know, so think that they're ready to make those moves when maybe they aren't, and the shadowing that we talked about earlier would be beneficial to them, to kind of get them the experience because they don't have that going into it. I can tell you from my personal experience, I just moved halfway across the country. And one of the things with this labor shortage is moving into a new market, I might have had to wait like a year to really kind of get my feet planted and start getting jobs and whatnot. But because I came into this market with some skills and have met a few key players who then introduced me to other key players, I've already booked work coming up. So I don't think any other time really in my career, in my history of my career, would that have been possible if it wasn't for the situation we're in nationally with labor shortages and lack of talented people. I can also say even me and Andy Lipnick this summer did a travel trip that they brought in people from, I was on the East Coast, Andy and a couple of guys were from the West Coast, and they had one local guy who was from 3 hours away or so to do this job because the entire local labor pool had moved on either to other jobs or other markets and whatnot. So there's been a lot of, this is not a new labor shortage, this has been going on. And it's through the pandemic, obviously not super long, but the last 18, 20 months or so. And it's going to continue. But one thing I can also say with this move is one of the particular companies who I've gotten connected with since I've been out in Michigan, as many of you guys know, I do audio and video. And they said, we're going to have to bring you in to see what your skills are because it's not very likely that someone has GS level audio abilities and GS level video abilities. So there was some skepticism. And I said, I understand anybody can put anything on their resume. So again, that jump up that people might be making, as long as they're being honest about what their skills are. And if they're honest, like, no, I can get you 70% of the way, like Brian had said earlier, great. Don't say you can get 120% of the way and then be drowning. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities. I think there's still going to be growing pains as some of those greener people, or again, people who maybe were just set and strike people pre-pandemic that didn't really move on to and stayed in the, in hopes that the industry would come back and now have an opportunity to fill a much higher role than they're used to. They could get themselves in over their head. And I think we're seeing, we're not, as everybody's been talking about, labor, hasn't been filled on a lot of shows, and then some of the labor that we are getting isn't necessarily up to the task. So I think we're going to continue to see that. I think that's going to affect audio, not just audio. It's going to be all departments of all events. I think somebody mentioned, riggers have just been, less filling calls and stuff. So I think we're going to see that industry wide. But in audio, there's a lot of audio. There's a lot of audio people. There's a lot of audio people. And I think that right now that line is getting, that area, I guess, that is getting tighter because you kind of need to get a body in a position at some point. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that. But I think, like someone else said, all of us on this panel have probably been working pretty heavily during the pandemic, whether it was we pivoted to something more virtual or, our clients just brought us in to do those productions for their virtual audiences and things like that. So we're uniquely in lucky positions that we've kept working. So that's good. And I think people with our skills will continue to work. And then, like I said, I think a lot of people are going to be able to move up rapidly to fill the vacuum because there very much is a void that does need to be filled. And training, Pete used to do practical show tech, which I loved in the beginning of the pandemic when I was sitting on my couch watching 30 hours of webinars a week, was great. Somebody mentioned Chris Leonard's Signal to Noise podcast. Even AV Tech Talks that I used to host, that I host, we're coming back soon. But those training, if people take advantage of that and go back and even if you didn't catch the boat the first time, go watch all the replays of those things and try to level up your skills. Then there's real opportunities for you to move forward, especially in audio. So that's kind of my opinion of it.
Awesome. And by the way, anytime I need to do a Zoom seminar, I'm going to get you to EQ my mic for me.
That's
your
a
mic is
really
like
great point.
Perfect.
That's a really great point that Ed made, though, that there is so much training material available online now that if you want to get into the business and make some headway, and you're not getting the calls yet, you certainly have something that can fill your day, learning like top level information on just about everything. So you should be able to learn it, be prepared when the opportunity arises.
Just to piggyback on what
there's something that's so important that keeps coming up, and Ike mentioned it, and you, Ed. Safety. Most of us here are in positions where we're supervising people who are new, green, never been on site before. People who don't know what the sound of a chain zipping out of a hoist sounds like, who will look straight up at it as it's coming down. And we now are in a very precarious position with this green base of workers where we're going to start seeing injuries. And I just wanted to get that out there before we wrap up. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
The question is, how many shackle pins do you want to dodge that day?
Yeah, but Jason, that's a good point. And it's not just the green folks. From my experience, because there has been a lack of work, a lot of the half-retired stagehands that can do the 700 hours a year or whatever, they're coming out to do the one show a month. I've now, almost every show I've been on, EMTs have had to come, like there's been collapses or like major medical issues. Mostly of these old timers, actually.
Our good friend Baja Fletcher slipped off the edge of a stage. One of the most experienced people in our industry that has ever seen, because it was his first show back after a year and a half off. Yes, you're absolutely right.
We had a very seasoned old timer, retired, came back to work, stagehand here in town, who just fell off the front edge of the stage at a local rock club and broke most of his face, his arm, his shoulder, like everything. And I mean, rightfully so, his family is like, you cannot go back to work. But like that was also at a rock venue here in town that had an extendable thrust that no one ever put any sort of marking on the front of. So you had a black stage that ended in darkness into the house for all of load in. And I can't say that I wouldn't have walked up to that stage edge and misjudged it and walked right off it too. And I'm a much younger man than the person who fell off the stage there. So there is also an element of like house practices at places and people not enforcing safety who are more experienced and or run venues.
I think people assumed that everybody knew the safety protocols and this sort of thing, and they can't assume that anymore. I work in theaters all the time, and things like pipes coming in and rigging and things and all this kind of stuff. In the past, everybody just knew, okay, stay away when these certain things are happening. Well, now you can't assume that anymore. The inexperienced people, and now you have to have a little bit of a safety meeting at the beginning. This is something we just started doing. Is like, okay, we're all going to get together. We're all going to talk about what we're going to do today, and that should have been done years ago, but now we know it's.
I like those shows where there's a safety talk at the beginning of every day, even if it's a seasoned crew, because it sets the tone for the whole thing.
Yeah, I was going to say
now.
It's supposed to be standard, Ike. I was going to say, sorry, I totally interrupted you because I do that. But I mean, the other thing with newer people, and not super green, but just newer people, is also you have to reinforce that wasn't a safety talk that we do to just check a box. Like, we really mean don't climb on top of case. Like I had twice in the last month that I had to literally, like, there was some younger stage hands that were being eager, and like they jumped up on top of case to roll around to load up a truss, and it wasn't they were like the lighting department. It wasn't my job. But I politely said, no. Like when they said don't get on cases this morning, they literally meant don't get
off
like
my case.
Yeah, don't get on. Go find a ladder. Don't. But I can just do like no, like try no, like no. This is not okay. Like, and those kinds of reinforcements. Because I remember being younger, and you heard the rules, and then there was what actually happened. And so
there's this unspoken thing, Brian, that we have to work at breakneck speed constantly. This idea of working constantly at an even pace does not exist. It particularly does not exist in the way local crews tend to get run. And I can speak to that because I'm an officer in my IA local. And we've had serious problems getting people back. We've had anybody over the age of 55 who has not come back full-time, is not coming back full-time, and probably isn't coming back at all. That's what I run into. We have lost at one employer almost 70% of the workforce because they decided that even though we were paying about double fast food wages, this gig sucks. And nothing's going to fix that. And part of what makes the gig suck is when road crew yells at them. What makes this gig suck is when the employer doesn't back them up. And what makes this gig suck is when they don't get training because it's just assumed that everything you need to know you will get by osmosis on the job site. And that part is the fault of other workers. But the other two, that's a shared responsibility. But long term, it's going to be 5 to 10 years before this labor shortage is fixed, because the only two people I've talked to in the last year and a half who want to come into production that haven't already gotten into it are the two girls that mixed audio at my thespian conference this afternoon. And they're sophomores. So they're not going to be graduating for 3 more years. And that's why I took them aside and said, is there anything more you'd like to know about the console you're using? I heard this in the first performance. Would you like to fix that? Here's something you can try. Here's what to listen for. Here's my workflow. Maybe it doesn't work for you, but I want to share that because I want these young ladies in my industry. They have talent, they have potential, and that's why I sit back and try and help them. And then I try to stay the heck out of their way, because that's the way they're going to learn, is to apply what they know, hear the results, and decide if it works for them or not. But I'm trying to encourage as many young people as I can, and non-old white guys in particular, to be in our industry.
Go, Joe, only because I think your hand was up first, and then Alyssa.
So on day 0 of my
Michael.
third tour, arguably, my A1 came to me and said, rule number 1 is that we do not yell at local crews. If we have to, come to me, come to our head carpenter, come to someone above you on the tour, and they will bring in the appropriate people locally, and then we'll sort out an issue. But I am baffled by people who yell at local crews.
Except to say stop.
Stop is a different thing. Emergency yelling is a different thing.
Yeah,
right. But there's nothing productive ever comes from yelling at. And I've worked with several times in the last year with very, very inexperienced A2s and A3s and whatever, and nothing good was going to come from me like yelling at them when they made a mistake. It's like, no, we just need to work through what you're doing. Like, it's basic logic.
And on top of that, I have found myself recently stopping people from working because they were jumping up on cases, and been accused of being the quote unquote union guy or the guy who's trying to drag work out. I'm like, no, I want you to go home with all the pieces you came in intact. At the end of the day, this gig does not require you to put your life at risk to jump up on a case and do this real quick. We can take the time to go get a ladder, and probably 2 of us go get a ladder to go do this safely. Please stop. I am someone who is guilty of jumping up on cases and I'm just going to go do this, or just climbing out on a balcony rail without a harness, and I am desperately trying to rein that in and be like, no, we need to go take a moment to go get the proper piece of gear to do this work safely. because nothing about this gig requires us to die for this gig. And
agreed. Sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done.
And the same thing is true with like, how many of these jobs have I been on recently where someone shows up and goes, oh, I didn't, even though I got an email saying that vaccination was required at the door to come on this job site, I didn't think that actually meant me. I thought that just meant like, why do I have to bother to like be COVID safe? And I'm like, it's the same reason why you have to wear a hard hat and wear a harness and like all these other things. Because if we take these steps, we might all be able to leave in one piece at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's that thing that I mentioned in passing, which was just, actually setting the culture of, we actually mean these rules. Like we're not just blowing smoke, like it actually matters. Alyssa.
To bring it back to like Tim, thank you for actually being the change you want to see. And doing that, like, that warms my heart. But that's exactly what you do. You go into schools, you go into high schools. That's how I got into this industry. No one in my family's in this industry. I was mixing in a high school. The sound guy they hired was like, hey, you're pretty good. Did you know you could make a career out of this? Did you know that you could go to school for this? No, I had no clue. And that's what you got to do. Local 21 has this amazing program where they go into schools in Newark and like some of the really rough places in Newark, and they pull these people out and these kids, and they teach them. And yes, everyone is aware that they are being taught, sometimes not the road crews, but like the road crews are going to be there for a day. But the older people and the more experienced people watch the other guys and make sure they're doing something right. Same with 59. They have a program to do that. I went to Emerson College. That is one thing they never talked to us about, was unions. They briefly like glazed over it. If someone had gone into these schools where these kids are graduating and they just spent 2 years online and they're desperate for work, if someone would just grab them, there's your skilled labor right there. There's your people hungry for it. There's your people willing to learn. And yes, you're going to have those arrogant people. And yes, on any crew, you're going to have the useless ones, the people who are drilling on themselves that they're just meant to push a box. But you know what? That was a thing pre-COVID too. But like, if you really want to get a more diverse labor force, go into your schools. Like right now, my hometown local 311, we're struggling to get new people who know what they're doing. So one of our former board members is trying to get a job at New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz, teaching the kids and then introducing them to the local and actually getting them to experience the real world, but under like the safeguard of the local so that we can teach them. And that's where you're going to get your skilled labor force from. Go directly to the source.
Michael, I'm hoping that your Wi-Fi has improved. You're the only one we haven't heard from. We are already over time, so
a little bit over time. So
which is fine. But go ahead, Michael.
I wasn't going to try and cover what I was saying before. I was just going to ask how many of you know what the Pareto principle is?
Tell us.
Pareto principle is something that's come up hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I think it's a Greek guy that came up with it. Anyhow, and this is true in every company, every enterprise, anywhere since like the beginning of time. 20% of your people will do 80% of the work. Always.
And then our challenge is to, one, try to fight against that, even though I understand exactly what you mean, and it's pretty much always does seem to work out that way. And in listening to all these opinions, what a great topic! Like, I think we could do this one again, like easily, and spend another hour on it. So many different aspects of what we're talking about.
Only if everybody comes back again.
Yeah, but only if everyone comes back. Everybody has to be here.
It's like I have an audience. It's awesome.
It is kind of nice. It's like pretending it's a real show. It's really cool. But I do think that those of us who are more experienced, I think over the next couple of years are going to have a specific responsibility to the ones that are never gonna, like the ones that shouldn't be there, if you're in a position of leadership, you have to make the decision of, am I better off with that position not being filled as opposed to having this person there? So that's part of the decision-making process. And then how do I encourage those who just need a push? How do I invest that extra time so that I get the return? But I think the biggest takeaway for me is, if you're entering the industry or you're at a place in your career that you want to go to the next level, whatever that means for you, or you want to go to another level, like I'm veering off into like sports mixing, which I've never done in my life. And I'm 56 years old, because there's a need everywhere. And so it's like, oh, I'll try that because I can. And I'm a little bored with what I'm doing. So I'll do that. Like, okay. Like, we are at a place where the opportunity is there and it is not going to last. A year, 2 years from now, a lot of this is I do agree with you, Tim, that it's going to take longer to fix it from an industry standpoint, but the real opportunity for people who want to go after it is right now. And it doesn't matter if you're an old timer or a new timer or somewhere in between. Like, this is our time to grab it. I am going to wrap us, Mr. Lipnick. I promise that whatever you were going to say, I'll publish it in my book. Okay,
it's
go
very
quick.
short, which is that other than having trouble filling calls, everything I have heard on here when it comes to best practices was the best practice also before COVID.
Yeah, no, true. Absolutely. And so it's, we're things are different. Things are the same. There you go. I do want to thank all of my my cohorts for joining us on this fabulous show. If you're listening to this on a podcast, it was edited by my mentee, Selena Dela Cruz, just making the point that there are some young women that are in this business, and some of them are talking to old, stupid guys like me. Wonderful. Love it. But thanks to everybody that was on my show. If you ever want to be on the show, yes, it was a great one. If you ever want to be on the show, there'll be a link in the bottom of the YouTube description. Just click on that. You can send me an email. I can get you on it. Same with the podcast. There's a little link in there. You can send me a thing and we'll get you involved. The only qualification to be on the show is that you like audio and have an opinion. So the bar is low. Thanks to everybody for being here. And Andy Broughton, if you are ready, if you could roll that fabulous bean footage.
Here we go.
Dressed up. I'll go for it. I don't need to hear a whole Ike's been on before. So.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It'll take a miracle.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.